Please welcome Zillow Group Chief Operating Officer, Amy Bohutinsky.
Meet Susan. Susan is our average U.S. home seller. Median age, 45 years old. She's married, often with children, and has a healthy income of over $87,000 a year. But Susan is not a data point, okay? She's not a PowerPoint slide. Susan is a human being. And when we dig deeper into the data on Susan, there's a lot more that meets the surface.
Whoa.
We ended up listing very fast, and it all sort of just like happened.
And my client come by in the next hour, and you got Cheerios spilled on the floor, and
we really needed to sell our house yesterday.
We wanted it to just be clean and not Cheerios on the floor.
The idea of selling it was heartbreaking.
Technology was huge in selling our house.
I used social media to advertise that we were selling.
I had a lot of alerts saved and would look at other houses in the neighborhood and a couple of other ones on our street.
The real estate apps on my phone totally replaced my Facebook addiction.
There will be Cheerios and they will be everywhere.
We didn't prompt that Cheerios line, by the way. The Susans that you saw are not our 45-year-old married median Susan. They're demographically different. They're undergoing a generational shift, and it's showing up so much in the way these Susans interact with data and in the way they interact with all of us. The largest generational category of sellers of Susans today are millennials. A third of all sellers today are millennials. And this is a generation aged 37 and under that has lived their entire adult lives online and today lives their entire lives on mobile. And this impacts the way they interact with everyone, the expectations that they have about what it means to sell a home. Additionally, almost 2/3 of all sellers today are selling for the first time. That means they've never before been through the process. They've never before worked with a real estate agent to sell their home. So these expectations that the younger first-time sellers have in their lives span everything, from the way they gather information, to the way they make plans, to the way they buy just about anything instantly on the spot, even to the way they order and buy fast food, getting it delivered to their homes. Every single day, they are making decisions in an on-demand economy, often trading convenience over cost. And this generational shift in who they are has a massive impact on how they think about such a big thing like selling a home for the first time. So this year, in our Zillow Group Consumer Housing Trends report, we talked to over 3,000 Susans, asking them a series of 60 questions, trying to understand what drives them, what's changing, what are their emotional stressors, what's working for them and what's not. And when we sifted through these mountains of data from all of these interviews with Susans, there were a couple of trends that came out very clearly. And I want to talk through some of those trends with you today. The first is that Susan, our seller, is emotional and stressed. And so much of this comes from the reason she's selling in the first place. Pivotal life moments, a new job, a new city, a new school for her kids, a new relationship or marriage, an ending relationship. These are big, stressful life moments that are driving why she's selling in the first place and adding to the urgency and the emotion about everything that's wrapped up inside of this. Additionally, many of our Susans, our sellers, are also trying to buy at the same time they're trying to sell. 71%, nearly 3/4 of all sellers, are also buying at the same time. So while we think about across the US, many markets are sellers markets, right? Sellers are in the driver's seats. Well, on one half of the transaction they're also trying to buy at the same time. So when the sale goes quickly, then they're on the other side of an equation saying, oh my gosh, I've got to get into this house. Susan tells us that's one of the single most pieces of stress she feels in the equation of selling her home. Susan's also comes into this with expectations. Remember, this is the generationally shifted Susan who's thinking about getting everything on demand. She wants things to happen quickly. And often the process of selling her home doesn't meet her expectations. So 3/4 of Susan said they struggled to sell within the time frame they needed to sell. And not surprisingly, the younger she is, the more struggle she has, with 50%, half of all millennial sellers saying they weren't able to sell in the time frame that makes them happy. So Susan has a lot going on and a lot of stress taking her into this. Now, I don't know about you, but when I'm stressed, one of the things I try to do is, it's just a human reaction, figure out what I can control. Where can I have more research? Where can I have more data? Where can I just get a broader understanding to help alleviate some of that stress? And we see that very much in the trends with Susan, because in addition to being stressed, she's also obsessed with research. Susan begins her selling process, begins her research a full 5 months before she ever picks up the phone and calls an agent and says, help me with this. And she starts looking at things like, what's going on with home sales in my neighborhood? What's my home worth? Who should I work with? A full 50% of sellers in the last year said before they partnered with an agent, they researched ratings and reviews on those agents. Once again, the younger the seller, the more apt they are to do this, with 2/3 of millennial sellers looking at online ratings and reviews and using this as an input to deciding who they're going to work with. They also are looking at a lot of data on their own home to understand, should I sell? Can I sell? 64% of all sellers said they looked at the Zestimate before deciding to sell their home. And once again, the younger these sellers are, the more they're looking at this data, with a full 80% of millennial sellers using a Zestimate before they sell their home. And once Susan's home is on the market, the obsession with data, the research doesn't end there. They want to understand what's happening every point along the way. So over half of them want to know how many people have viewed their home online. They're looking on Zillow, they're looking on Trulia at the stats. They're tracking that against the comps of similar homes for sale in their neighborhood. They're wondering, how am I doing? I'm sure they're asking all of you multiple times a day. It helps to alleviate some of that stress, the knowledge. They also want to know how their home is performing in visits and calls and visitors to open houses. And they want to know how many people are contacting you. They say it's one of the most important things is how many buyers are looking at my home, contacting my agent, trying to understand if they want to get into this home. The research helps with the stress. And these two big points, stress and research and data obsession, are what leads to our third trend for Susan. And this is something we heard from seller after seller after seller post-process. They told us, gosh, I just wish there was a simpler, easier way to approach this. You see, all of the convenience and all of the on-demand economy that these younger millennial sellers have impacted and touched in every point of their life, it's a big part of their psyche, and it's a big part of their expectations, and they're wondering, could there be a simpler way to do this when I sell my home the next time? Now, one thing, you've heard this a couple times now, but I just want to put a point on it. One thing these expectations are not impacting is the fact that sellers want to work with an agent. And when we look at the data here, 90% of sellers worked with an agent in selling their home in the last year. This is a number we've been tracking for the last dozen years at Zillow, and it hasn't budged. If anything, it's gone up a little bit. So sellers want to work with an agent. This is a big, emotional, expensive thing. But that hasn't stopped innovation and invention in our industry that's trying to come up with a simpler, better, more one-click way for Susan. So in the past 3 years alone, $1 billion has been raised in venture capital for companies that are trying to invent a new way for Susan to sell her home. One company in particular, Opendoor, has raised $720 million. To put that into context, that's almost 10 times what Zillow raised back when we were a private company 12 years ago. And the one thing every one of these models has in common when they're thinking about a new way for Susan to sell her home is they don't put the agent at the center of the transaction. Even though the data shows us that Susan wants to work with an agent, some of this new invention is trying to come up with ways for Susan to sell her home without one. So earlier this year, amid this backdrop, the backdrop of what we know about Susan and her needs and her wants, and what we know about new invention that's coming into the industry, at Zillow Group we said there's gotta be a better way, and we are in a position to figure out how are we gonna meet Susan's changing needs, and how are we gonna create opportunity for agents while we do that? And so we launched a test called Instant Offers. And we partnered with a number of people in this room in our 2 test markets, Orlando and here in Las Vegas. And it's a test we launched for Susan where we do a couple of things. On Zillow, the potential seller comes on, and she enters information about her home as well as a number of photos about her home. And she enters that information into Zillow, and a couple days later, she gets an email back. In the background, this information is passed on to a number of institutional investors, companies that tend to buy homes sight unseen, usually below market price, and it's passed on to a premier agent in that market who is signed up for the program. And a few days later, Susan receives an email like this. It includes offers from the investor saying how much they would offer to buy her home sight unseen, and it includes a full CMA from a premier agent. And Susan is given the choice, would you like to contact one of these parties? Or put another way, is the need to sell your home right now so urgent that you would accept these investor offers that are below market value, or would you like to talk to this agent who has prepared a real CMA and is ready to talk to you today about selling your home? It's been a fascinating test over the last 4 or 5 months. We have learned so much that's driving where the test goes, but let me tell you the couple of things we've learned. First of all, these are real intended sellers. So over a third of the people who take this action end up selling or listing their home within 45 days. Think about that from a lead product, that over a third of the sellers that come through actually sell their home. This is some of the best and most valuable conversion we have ever seen in any lead product, in any product throughout our industry where we can identify people who are on the cusp of selling, and we can pass these people on to parties who can help them. We've also learned that there are a small number of sellers who are willing to trade convenience for price and accept these investor offers. It's a small number, but when they do, it's because of what's happening in their life. And often it's a cute life event that's putting them in the place where they say, I've got to sell now. We've seen it a number of times in Orlando, one of our test markets, where an elderly parent dies. Right? This elderly parent usually has 100% equity in their home. They've lived there for decades. They have adult children spread across the United States, and these adult children say, you know what, it is just so emotional and cumbersome right now for us to think about going into this home, clearing it out, sprucing it up, staging it for sale. We are willing to take that below market offer to move the home quickly. And these are the stories we hear from the people who choose the investor offer. But overwhelmingly, what we've learned is that most sellers who go through instant offers work with an agent. And they are thrilled because remember, these are sellers that increasingly are a part of this on-demand economy. They are used to, at the click of the button, getting the answer they need. And here for the first time is a product where they're able to say, hey, I want to sell my home. Here's information about my home. And within a couple days, a terrific agent who knows their home and knows their neighborhood gives them a CMA over email and says, call me, let's work together. The sellers who go through this program are thrilled. And we're excited to hear that the agents who have worked with us on this program are pretty thrilled too. So Charmaine here in Las Vegas says, I love this program. I get a direct transfer to a seller. I can often turn that around to a same-day appointment to get the listing process started. Kirby, who has teams in Las Vegas and San Diego, told us with instant offers, we start out 3 steps ahead because sellers are already invested in the process. Sellers are empowered and motivated to achieve the best outcome for the sale of their home. And I want to thank Kirby and Charmaine and Veronica and all of the other agents who have worked with us on this test program, because it is a test. And when we try something new for the first time that's never been done in our industry, there's going to be kinks. And you all have been so valuable at partners to help us learn and help us iterate. So what's next? What's next for instant offers is continued testing. There's more we can do to better meet Susan's needs and make this a more seamless process for her. And there's more we can do with our agent partners to make it easier for you to provide these CMAs, to better connect you to the right consumers who you can help. We believe here at Zillow Group that the best ideas are not one-time ideas we write on a whiteboard and just go with it. It's continued testing and iteration to make it better and better every day. And we're going to continue doing that with instant offers. We're also expanding soon to a third market, Phoenix, where we're going to be partnering with premier agents in Phoenix to test it out with us there. And we're also going to be partnering for the first time with a couple of brokerages. And those of you who are here in Phoenix, we are excited to work with you on this program and to help you discover more seller leads. So, to wrap up my talk today, I want to remind us, what do we know about Susan and what can we do with that? We know that Susan is selling because, gosh, there are big things happening in her life, big things outside of us in her own personal human life that are forcing a sale, and she's coming to us with that. And she's saying, help me. She's stressed, she's emotional, she's bringing this with her into her relationship with all of you. She's also obsessed with research, right? She wants to know every step of the way. She wants to know about you. She wants to know about what's happening with your home. And all of this is leading to Susan searching for a better way to sell her home, a better way to partner. And we are excited to navigate this new world for Susan with all of you. Thank you.